My daughter Lila talks to dead people. It's not as morbid as it sounds. You see, my husband's grandmother passed away last year. Leota was a wonderful woman, the matriarch and rock of her family. We named our daughter Lila after her, and she and Grandma Lee shared a special bond. Grandma Lee loved many things, including the color pink, Wendy's milkshakes, and fancy hats. After she died, her daughter, my mother-in-law, gave each of Grandma Lee's great-grandchildren one of her special hats. Lila received a red wool felt cloche dotted with rhinestones that she placed on a shelf in her room. It stayed on the shelf for a number of months, and then one night, Lila asked for the hat when we were saying our prayers. She cradled the soft material in her arms as she asked God to bless all the people in her life she loved. And when she finished listing all the members of our family, Lila asked me, "Can I still bless Grandma Lee even though she died?" "Of course you can," I said. "Do you want to do that now?" Lila nodded. Then, holding the hat upside down by its brim like a tiny red wishing well, she leaned over and began whispering into it. "What are you doing?" I asked her gently after a few moments had gone by. "I'm talking to Grandma Lee," she said. "I'm telling her my secrets." And each night since, after we read our books and say our prayers and sing our songs, after hugs and kisses and lights out and extra drinks of water and last trips to the bathroom, my husband or I will walk by Lila's room to check on her, and we will often see her snuggled under her covers with Grandma Lee's hat, chattering away until she finally falls to sleep. I love that death doesn't scare my daughter. That at 8 years old, her imagination won't allow her to see death as the end of her relationship with her great-grandmother. When I was Lila's age, the mere mention of someone dying sent me into panic mode. I held my breath driving past cemeteries. I had to be excused from Sunday school during the weeks we were learning about the Jewish rituals of death and dying because when the teacher began talking, I felt like the walls of the classroom were closing in on me. I used to lie in my bed at night, perfectly still, without making a move, and say to myself, "This is what it will feel like when I am dead," except I won't even be able to think this thought. Even now, during yoga, when we come to the end of class and the teacher invites us to lie down in the resting position of Shavasana, the corpse pose, I cringe. But my beautiful 8-year-old has somehow come to see what it has taken me 40 years to learn, that the death of a loved one does not mean the death of love. I believe our relationships with those who have passed on do continue in ways that are different and beautiful and mysterious. Watching and listening to Lila, I am more and more convinced that our souls, the true essences of who we are connected to one another across space and time in ways we may not even realize. The other day, Lila was with my mom, who was showing her old black and white photographs of her relatives from many generations past. "That little blonde-haired toddler," my mom said, "that's your great-grandma Ethel." "That baby girl is your mommy?" Lila said, her eyes opened wide and filled with wonder. "It is," said my mom. Then she pointed to the woman holding the baby girl, saying, "And that lady is her mommy. That was my Grandma Annie. That's your great-great-grandma." Oh, how I wish you could have known Grandma Annie. She would have loved you so much. Lila looked at my mom and became quite serious. "We did meet," she said. "We met a long time ago when I was in heaven." "You were in heaven?" asked my mom. "Yes," said Lila, "before I was born. I was in a big room with all the other babies, and there was a door, a giant door. And on the other side of the door were all of the old people who had died. And right before I was about to be born, the door opened, and I got to step into the other room with all the grandmas and grandpas. And there was Grandma Annie, and I went up to her, and she kissed me and said, "I love you." And then I was born. That night, after tucking, Lila asked me if she thought that Grandma Lee's feelings would be hurt if she started speaking to Grandma Annie and Grandma Ethel, too. No, I told her, I think she'd like that very much. So I kissed her forehead and crossed the room to turn off her light. As I stood in the doorway looking back at her, she smiled at me and said, "Then do you think you could get me a few more hats?"